Um, Thanks, everyone. Welcome. We have a few people that are having trouble getting on, but we're going to go ahead and get started in order to be respectful of people's time. So if we do a little quick change partway through, you'll know why. So I want to welcome you to the training on performance measurement for 2021. I'm Elaine Carlson. I'm the co-director of the Center to Improve Program and Project Performance, and we are the contractor for OSEP that handles the performance measurement work. I am joined by a few of my colleagues, Carrie Wills and Muriel McKinnon, who you'll see and hear from later. We will have time for questions at the end, but you can also type your questions in the chat, and we will monitor that and try to answer them at the appropriate time during the presentation. Please also note that the training is being recorded so that we will have it available if people are unable to attend today. So the purpose of the training is to describe the process of collecting the program measures for OSEP this year and to clarify what's expected from you. We will describe the program GPRA performance measures, suggest ways to enhance the quality of your submissions, and then to demonstrate the website that the grantees will use to upload materials. We will review the schedule for the data collection, and of course, we will answer whatever questions you might have. So GPRA requires performance assessment of government programs for purposes of assessing agency performance and improvement. OMB, together with the federal agencies, determines how the programs will be assessed. And then Congress uses performance assessment data to justify program funding. So how does it work? OSEP reports progress on program performance measures annually to OMB and to Congress. That provides an aggregate picture of performance, not for each grant, but for the program overall. And their review of OSEP's program performance affects continued funding of the IDEA programs. OSEP also uses the data to improve the TA&D program's performance. So the data are very important and are used in a variety of ways.
Elaine,
Yep.
I believe Susan's here. She might want to join us.
Hello, everybody.
Do you want to jump in, Susan?
Sure, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Finish slide 3. So we are on slide 4. We report the program performance annually, the measures, to Congress, and this gives us an overview of the whole program and how it's performing. So the Congress's review of our program data does affect the continued funding of our IDEA programs. And we also use that data to improve our program performance, including the deafblind program. So the data are very important to us. So the purpose of the TA&D program, as you may know, sort of the umbrella program over the deafblind program, is to promote academic achievement and to improve results for children with disabilities by providing technical assistance, supporting model demonstration projects, and disseminating useful information and implementing activities that are supported by scientifically based research. So for this purpose, annual measures are provided to grantees, and you report on them, and they pertain to quality, relevance, and usefulness. And so this year you will be providing information about the quality, the relevance, and the usefulness of a new service, which involves our collecting data from you in addition to what you provide to OSEP in your APR. So thinking about how is quality rated, what does it mean to have a high quality product or service? OSEP has determined that there are 2 dimensions for quality: the substance and the communication. So the substance dimension is, does the product content or the content delivered through the service reflect evidence of conceptual soundness and quality grounded in legislation or policy? And the communication dimension is the product content or content delivered through the service presented in such a way so as to be clearly understood, as evidenced by being well organized, free of editorial errors, and appropriately formatted. So an independent panel of reviewers will judge the quality of a product or service by scoring each dimension, these two dimensions, substance and communication, on a 4-point scale, ranging from 0, which is very low, to 1, which is moderately low, through 2, moderately high, to 3, very high. In addition, the score for the substance dimension is double weighted, which means that services can receive 0, 2, 4, or 6 points for substance. Together, the two dimensions add up to as many as 9 points, and all scores of 6 and higher are considered high quality products or services. So that's kind of in a nutshell how these are scored by the raters who look at them. Moving on to relevance. How is relevance rated? And what does it mean to have a highly relevant product or service? We've determined that there are 3 dimensions for relevance, and these are need, pertinence, and reach. So the need dimension answers the question, does the product or content delivered through the service attempt to solve an important problem or deal with a critical issue? The pertinence dimension is, does the product or content delivered through the service address a problem or issue recognized as important by the target audience? And finally, the reach dimension is, to what extent is the product or content delivered through the service applicable to diverse segments of the target audience? So the independent panel of reviewers judges the relevance of a service by scoring each dimension on a 4-point scale, very low to very high. And together, the 3 dimensions add up to as many as 9 points. And again, all scores of 6 and higher are considered highly relevant. Finally, how does usefulness be rated? And what does it mean to have a highly useful product or services? OSEP has determined that there are 2 dimensions for usefulness, ease and suitability. The ease dimension is, does the product or content delivered through the service address a problem or issue in an easily understood way with directions or guidance regarding how the content can be used to address the problem or issue? And then the suitability dimension is, does the product or service provide the target audience with information or resources that can be used again or in different ways to address the problem or issue? So the reviewers judge the usefulness of a service by scoring each dimension on a 4-point scale ranging from very low to very high. And in addition, the score for the suitability dimension is double weighted, which means the service can receive either 0, 2, 4, or 6 points for suitability. And together, the 2 dimensions add up to as many as 9 points, and all scores of 6 and higher are considered highly useful again. So who participates in the sample? So as you know, a random sample of 10 deafblind projects are selected from the list of projects that were active in fiscal year 21, but that did not participate in GPRA reporting in that year. And SIP draws the random sample and notifies projects of their selection. So I want to turn it now back to Elaine.
Thanks,
we'll talk
Susan.
about the data collection.
Thanks, Susan.
Yep.
So this is a quick timeline. So SIP first asks projects to upload a list of new services that were first delivered during fiscal year 2021, meaning October 1st, 2020 through September 30th, 2021. And that will be uploaded to sipsite.org, which is our website. We then will randomly select one item from the list, and that is the new service that will be reviewed by the panel. When developing your list of new services, please remember you don't have to include 10 new services. 10 is just the maximum. And we ask that you focus on listing the major services you released for the first time in fiscal year 2021. Projects upload a description of the selected new service, along with any supporting materials, again, to the SIP website, and a description of the quality, relevance, and usefulness of the new service is sent to a stakeholder expert panel for review. So what is a service? Is kind of a key question to all of this. A service is defined as work performed by an OSEP-funded project to provide information or assistance to a specific audience on a topic relevant to the improvement of outcomes for infants, toddlers, children, and youth with disabilities. OSEP recognizes 3 levels of TA services, which I'm sure is familiar to everyone: the general or universal, targeted or specific, and then intensive or sustained technical assistance. And services can be listed and selected from any of those 3 levels. So examples of services, they might include conducting training or providing technical assistance, providing captioning, video description, braille, or other accessible formatting of text or media, leading and convening informational meetings, or responding to inquiries from a targeted population. We like to note that for the purposes of performance measurement, maintaining a website is not considered to be a service, so please don't include that on your list.
So I wanted to ask again and focus again on how do I write a good description?
Oops, sorry, we missed one slide, Susan.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, I'm going to go back, I apologize. So the deafblind projects will develop a new service description guide that the panel will review. And the new service description guide and the supplemental materials that you submit along with it are really important to the GPRA review process, and they really require time and attention. The guides are the primary source of information consulted by the expert panel in making their quality, relevance, and usefulness ratings. We do encourage you to submit supporting materials along with the guide, but the guide has to stand alone because the panelists are not required to read through the supplemental materials, even though we feel like they usually do. So when you submit a guide, it has to stand alone. It can't say, for example, see the attached PowerPoint or go to this URL to see the service. It has to be complete in and of itself. That said, we do find that the panelists really do like to have supplemental material. So if you have PowerPoint slides, you can include those. If you have a recording of a webinar, you can include the link. Projects that submit complete, detailed, and clear guides with supporting materials make it a lot easier for the expert panel to rate the service quality, relevance, and usefulness. And based on past reviewer comments, low ratings are almost always a result of inadequate descriptions. If the work is not documented, the panelist is going to assume that it wasn't done. So please keep that in mind. Your project officers and the SIP staff are always willing to have a conversation with you about this work and to review drafts of your description guide if that would be helpful.
Thank you for emphasizing that, Elaine. I want to reiterate that that we are at OSEP planning to have conversations with each of the sampled grantees on your service description. And so rest assured that we are there for you on that process. So looking at the next slide, how do I write a good description?
So first, of course, it requires time and effort, and we understand that and appreciate it. So these are some tips that we've developed over time. Please read the criterion carefully and respond fully and clearly. There are some two-part questions in the description guide, and it's very easy to just read the first one and respond to it. So please make sure that you're reading the full question and addressing all the component parts. Guide your reader to your response to the criteria so it's easy for them to see how your service meets each of the criteria. Share your description with others so they can ask clarifying questions and correct any inadvertent. Of course, proofread carefully. As you know, mistakes in spelling or grammar can be distracting to the reader. And I think it just in general makes your product stand out as being of high quality if it's carefully written and free of those types of errors. So we wanted to provide you with some examples of submissions from prior years that have received positive reviews from the panels. And this is not to suggest that you should write an entry just like this, but what we want to show you is the level of detail that is required in order to receive a positive rating from the panel. So the first quality dimension pertains to legislation and policy that is driving your service. And so this is what one panelist wrote. IDEA requires that each state develop an SPP evaluating its implementation of IDEA and describing how the state will improve that implementation. So first they start with the legislation, IDEA. Then they talk specifically about indicators C3 and B7 of the SPP APR and what the requirements are for those indicators. So you'll see that it's very detailed in terms of making an explicit linkage between the product or service that's being provided and then the legislation, or in this case, also the indicators that it's being linked to. So please try to be explicit for the panel and identify some specific legislation or policy that's driving the service. For the deafblind projects, there are also policy letters that can be useful in identifying the specific policy references. And so, Susan, is there a place where we can share those policy letters?
We are actually providing guidance to those selected deafblind grantees at OSEP, and we will send them the link for that policy.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So sometimes that can be really helpful.
Yeah.
Grantees to have access to those. Okay, so the second quality measure pertains to making sure information is clear. And one of the earlier grantees wrote that we provided content in print, in large, auditorily and visually via PowerPoint presentation with embedded capability to access the internet for exhibition of referenced materials, large group seminar presentations, small group and partner discussions and activities, and opportunities for attendees to approach or question the presenters. So again, some very detailed information about how they made sure the information was clear. Another grantee wrote, the slide decks for the webinar were reviewed carefully by TA staff and other content experts, including State Part C and Part B 619 staff, as well as OSEP staff. Review by the university's editing staff was a key strategy for ensuring the information was well written, clear, and free of errors. And finally, a third grantee wrote that we provided a basic, concise agenda in language specifically intended for ease of understanding for all attendees, and most especially for parents and families. We provide a table of contents intended to expand on the agenda. Timelines included age-appropriate activities, assessments, and planning tools.
Okay. So the next slide addresses relevance, which, as you know, and they're going to ask, does the service that you're describing address important problems? So the first relevance measure asks the grantee to show that the content of their service does address an important problem or critical issue. One grantee wrote, "Encounters in schools and adult service agencies with deafblind individuals and their families reinforced for us the need for a workshop on transition. Because deafblindness is such a low incidence disability, medical practitioners, educational entities, and adult service agencies and members of the general public, including employers, may only rarely, if ever, encounter an individual who is deafblind. We carefully considered aspects of transition unique to students who are deafblind, such as barriers, essential skills, effective practices, tools, and resources, and designed our robust content accordingly. In short, we considered the diversity among the relatively small numbers of individuals who are deafblind, and it was our intent to address and disseminate highly diverse kinds of information and materials that were yet specific to the needs created by deafblindness." So the second relevance measure asks the grantee how they ensure that the problem or issue is recognized as important. One grantee wrote, "Part C and Part B Section 619 coordinators consistently rate child outcomes, data quality, and data use as areas of high need for TA." In addition, the center receives a large number of TA requests from states related to child outcomes measurement. Since most states use the COS process to collect child outcomes data, the center often receives TA requests around designing and implementing high-quality, comprehensive professional development on the COS process to early intervention and preschool special ed practitioners as a strategy for improving the quality of their child outcomes data. And finally, we considered the increasing number of requests for TA in the area of transition from parents, as well as state and local entities, to be our greatest call to action. The third relevance measure asks the grantee how they ensure content is applicable to diverse audiences. One grantee wrote, "Through our years of work in the Latino community, we have identified that we have better response to the clinics if we, A, advertise well in advance, B, hold them in a center that is identifiable for Latino and Hispanic families, and C, have an area designed for their children to play near where they are meeting." Materials were developed with input from a variety of stakeholders. Specifically, input was obtained from parents, researchers, program administrators, direct service providers, practitioners, and training and technical assistance providers. Our center has bilingual staff members to serve families who speak Spanish. We also have connections with various universities and community organizations to provide translation services for our one-on-one planning sessions. The model of working one-on-one with families is very effective for families who, due to their cultural or preferences, are reluctant to speak up and ask questions in a group setting. So next we'll go on to the usefulness slide.
So this is the last of the three measures. And the first usefulness dimension is that grantees are asked to show that the content addresses a problem in an easily understood way and includes instructions on use. So one grantee wrote, "We asked attendees to keep a specific child in mind throughout the day while the content was provided. And we asked them to consider how the content being presented could be beneficial to that child. We also provided a series of questions to keep in mind. Our intention was to ensure attendees could more clearly understand ways the material could be used by asking them to envision how it would relate to a particular child." Another grantee wrote, To assist with navigating and using the materials on the web page, a guidance document was developed describing the various tools and resources in the collection. In addition, guidance on using the materials was provided through a national webinar. So the second usefulness dimension asks the grantee to show how the content can be used again. So one grantee wrote, "We produce thumb drives with all of the transition-related information provided during the service. Files on the drive include the 3 tiers of the agenda, the table of contents, and the timeline. We encouraged attendees to personalize the drives by adding any additional resources on deafblindness and/or transition for easy future access." And then finally, the materials in the workshop packet can be used as an ongoing reference to reinforce the information learned at the training. Additionally, an archived recording of the tips and tools training is available on the website. Okay, so again, those examples are not meant to suggest that these are the things you should actually write on your submission, but rather this is the level of detail that the panelists would like to see. If you're writing one sentence in response to one of the questions, that is probably not enough. As you saw, these are typically a paragraph or 2 for each of the prompts. And I apologize, I'm getting a message that my internet connection is unstable. I'm not exactly sure what's going on. So hopefully you can hear me okay, see me okay, and see the slides.
Yes, we can, Elaine. You're coming through pretty well.
Thanks.
Maybe 1 or 2 words may have dropped,
Yes.
but altogether you're pretty good.
Okay.
So look, the next
Thank you,
slide
Susan.
asks, how do you submit materials?
So the grantees will upload a copy of their completed description guides and supporting materials to sipsite.org, our website. Please be sure that the URL addresses for your supporting materials are marked clearly. And please limit supporting materials to no more than 5 files per guide. As we said, the panelists really like seeing supporting materials, but they do not want to have to open 30 separate files in order to get through the review. So we have found that 5 is usually sufficient. The deadline for uploading the materials is April 4th. And let me show you the more timeline here. So the week of February 14th, you received notification about your participation. Obviously, today is March 1st and we're having the training. By March 11th, we ask that you upload the list of new services to the SIP website. And again, that's not a detailed submission. It's just a list of the new services from which we will sample. The week of March 21st, we will notify projects which of those services was selected, and then we will request the detailed service description from you with related documentation or supplemental materials. By April 4th, we ask that the project upload their one service description guide along with any supporting materials to the SIP website. Okay, so let me stop for 1 minute and see if there are any questions in the chat that haven't been answered yet. Someone is asking, Michelle is asking whether supporting materials have to be submitted via our URL. No, absolutely not. You can have attachments. In fact, most people are sending attachments. If a URL is easier, feel free, but for the most part, files being attached, it's perfectly fine. Okay. So I am going to turn the presentation over to Marielle, who is going to do a demonstration of the website and show you how you will upload your materials.
Thank you, Elaine. And I got kicked out, but so I can't see back in the chat earlier, but I know that there was a question about which center needs to submit a service. I'm not sure if that has been addressed yet.
All of the centers that have been selected are going to submit the service descriptions. So, and don't worry, any of you that are involved in this year's, sampled grantees, we are going to be having a phone call with you to go over a lot of these details. Make sure you feel comfortable about the process.
Hi, this is Tony Hollingsworth from Mississippi Project. There was a question earlier in the chat, and I also need that answer. So I thought I'd bring it back up. We do often collaborate with each other on services. And so the question previously was about, does the service that we submit, the list, have to be ones that we have totally by ourselves in isolation provided, as opposed to a collaborative service with another project?
No,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that the main issue is if you delivered that service in fiscal year 21, you delivered that service, obviously. Are you able to go through those questions that the service description is asking? And we'll ask you to look at that for the elements, quality, relevance, and usefulness. Can you answer those questions? So is it grounded in legislation? Is it free of edit? How do you make sure it's free of editorial errors, and what's your process and so forth? And how did you know this was a need, for example, in your state? Those are the questions about the service that are going to be asked that you address. And so as long as you are able to answer those questions about it, there shouldn't be an issue with joint development of a service or, supporting materials around a service.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I know that, especially since COVID, we have, collaborated even a great deal more for some of these services. And so then it makes me think, well, okay, perhaps there's an activity that we could answer those questions very well, but it would still have been in a collaborative way. So if another project, one of the collaborators, I also wanted, that got selected, like randomly got selected as their service that they had in their list, then our answers might look similar. Is that a problem? Or should we avoid that at all costs? Do you understand my question on this one? It's a nuance.
We'll ensure that we don't select the same service from two grantees. How's that?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. And if we don't have any more questions, I'll go ahead and do the presentation portion. Okay. And so this is the SIP site, and some of you may be familiar with it. So this is what it looks like when you first get there. So the first step you're going to do is go to the login tab. And so you'll be prompted here to log in, but initially you'll need to actually create a unique password, which you will do by clicking on Forgot Password. And then that will prompt you to enter your email address, and you're going to use the email address that you're using to communicate with us. So wherever you've received the correspondence and the initial emails from SIP, that is the email address that we have associated with your account in this system. So you'll enter that there and click Send Password. And so you will receive an email that looks like this, and it has some information for you to set up your password. So let's just go back to the login page here. So again, you're going to use your username, and that's your email. And then for the initial login, the password you're going to use is the password that is provided in the email that is sent to you from doing that forgot password function. And then you'll press login. And that will take you to a page where you're actually prompted to create your own unique password, and you'll have to take the criteria here into consideration. So for the current password field, you're going to use that same temporary password that you received in the email. And then the following two fields, you'll enter your new password that you will create, and you will need to confirm the spelling of that new password. And I conveniently created one here for today's demo purposes. If you don't take any of the criteria, or if you're missing one of the criteria, if it's not at least 12 characters, has at least an uppercase letter or a lowercase letter, and at least one number and a special character, you will get a red error message. So you'll just have to make sure that it meets that criteria. Then you'll go on to press reset password. And you will press continue to home page. And so that brings you to the home, or to the first page of your login. And there are two additional tiles here where SIP provides other services, but the one that you'll need to access is conduct GPRA reporting. And then you'll navigate through a series of tiles, and we have tailored it to your view so that you are basically just seeing the one that's relevant to you. So you can click your way through. We're going to go to QRU Review, QRU Review 2022, Stakeholder Panel, TA&D Panel Documents. And then here you'll see two folders. The guidance documents folder contains resources relevant to the data collection. You can, when you click there, you'll see that there's some forms of the form if you wanted to take a look at those. You'll also see the PowerPoints for today's training. And this is where we will also have the recording for today's training. Okay, and if you can go back and you'll get to the grantee documents folder. And this is the folder that every grantee needs to access. And once you get there, you will click on, so for your group of grants, the folder that pertains to you will be deaf-blind grants. And so you'll see folders that have already been created for you, and you'll just locate the folder that has your grant number there and your center name there, and then you will click on that to upload first your list of services, and then once we sample that, you'll also be following the same steps in uploading in your folder your description guide. And so we're going to just go to the first one as an example. So when you locate the folder for your grant, you can either drag or drop files in the area here, or upload them by pressing the upload button. Okay. So here as an example, I'm going to upload two documents, grant service description guide, and I'm also going to upload grant service document 1. So this is an example of the naming convention that we suggest you to use. It does make it more, this is useful for our reviewers when they are reviewing the information, just to have the grant there. And so you can, when you upload your service descriptions, we ask that you label it with your grant number, and then service description guide, and any supporting materials that you label it your grant number, service document 1, or grant number, service document 2, and so on, for however many supporting documents you are uploading to support that service description guide. And that concludes this portion of the webinar. Do we have any questions about the SIP site? Okay, so I will go ahead and pass it back to Elaine.
Thanks, Marielle. I know a few other people have entered in the chat that they're having trouble with internet connections as well. We will have a recording of the webinar available, and then you will also get a hard copy quick start guide for using the SharePoint site. So don't despair. Information will come to you in a variety of forms. And of course, as Susan said, the OSEP project officers will be reaching out to answer any questions that you might have as well. So we do have a closing poll question. We really would like to know in what areas you need additional clarification or assistance related to the GPRA measurement process. Do you need help with preparing your lists of new services? Do you need help with the description guides, accessing the website, or you don't really feel like you need any additional assistance? You feel like you're good to go. And then, of course, there's other if you feel like you have some other need that we have not identified. So if you could go ahead and answer the poll question, we will use that information as we're tailoring our support and outreach to you. So I just wanted to give you some faces to go with the names. Marielle and Carrie are the folks behind the emails that you receive. And so Marielle on the right and Carrie on the left. They are more than happy to help you with anything that you're working on with regard to the GPRA measurement process. We don't want you to spin your wheels. If you have a question, please reach out to us. It's likely a question that we have dealt with many times before. And, we want to make this as efficient for you as possible. We know that it's burdensome. Many of you have done it time and time again. And so we want to make sure that we can really make it as painless as possible. Susan, do you want to say anything before we?
Sure. No, I just wanted to
back to their day?
Sherry's question. Thank you, Sherry, for your question. Is like, why is this timeline so tight? I guess it's March 11 is when you submit your list of services. That's just a list of the new services. That shouldn't be too hard for you to just think back about fiscal year 21 and think about the services. But then getting the package together, I think, is what you're saying is going to take the time. And then the deadline, and that is April. Is it April 8th? I don't have it in front of me. But don't worry. The OSEP project officer is going to reach out to you and help you think about those, and that will probably take quite a bit of time off your calendar. And we do know that April 4th, by the way, thank you. And so that'll take a lot of, hopefully some of the stress off, and, we'll work with you to try to review your submission and make sure that everything is there. I think so. Hopefully, I know you do have an APR that's also coming in May, but this will be, the month prior. So hopefully you'll be able to do it all. I do know it's a busy time of year.
This is Sherry. So just to thank you for that response. I guess what I'm kind of gave me a little bit of a heart attack is it said that the CIPP would notify us about which services were selected the week of March 21st. So, I mean, there's 5 days in that week. So if they don't get back to us before the 25th, which is Friday, then we have less than 2 weeks. We have 1 week basically to submit, to get all that together and submit. So that's really tight.
I agree. If SIP can get back to us as quickly as possible on that, so that they know which one to prepare, that will be very helpful. I quite agree that would be really desirable to know as quickly as possible which of those products and services that they list are going to be selected. Of course, if you only had one new one, you know which one is going to be selected, but I do understand why that's an important thing to do. So if they submit them by the 8th, or I guess by the 11th, then maybe they could get them back, in a week or so.
We will draw the sample we'll draw the sample as quickly as we get the lists. How's that?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. If you're on time with your lists, everybody's on time, they can draw the sample, but if people are late with that list, that's when it holds SIP up. So if you get those in by the deadline, that will be very helpful. Thank you both so much, and all of you for joining us. Once again, expect an email from your OSEP project officer just to reach out. And I want to thank you, Elaine, very much for bearing with us through this kind of shaky recording session today. But again, if you have any questions, everyone, please reach out to your OSEP project officer as well.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you.
All right.
Have a great day, everyone.
Everybody. All right. Bye-bye.